Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and tonight I'm delighted to be joined by Tommy Sheridan, where we'll be talking to Sam WARDROP. Welcome to Barra's Art and Design. Sam WARDROP, former Celtic player, social media influencer, content creator, and I'm really intrigued by your journey. It's not been the usual kind of footballer's journey, has it?
No, it's been a little bit more kind of unconventional, I would say. I've tried to stay away from the phrase influencer. I just feel like that's associated with like your Love Island and all those kind of folk. I try to be more.
I mean, who would do reality TV, Sam?
Influencer.
Big brother. There they go.
Would you class yourself as an influencer?
Sam probably doesn't even know that. Big brother.
I don't know. Of course.
He's too young to know that. No, not at all, mate. I actually, we can get into this as a discussion because my daughter's 19, and I hate the fact that she tells me that what she wants to do is she wants to go on Love Island. Right. You know, that's become an ambition. And I think a lot of young people now, they're so taken in with a lot of the reality TV.
Because it's been omnipresent in their life.
Omnipresent, that's exactly it.
The novelty factor doesn't exist, Tommy, because it's always been there.
I want her to want to be a teacher or a doctor or a vet or something. I want her to be something that's adding to society.
But I do think having a platform after being on something like Love Island can play into, for example, if you do become a teacher or a vet, you can utilise it in a positive way. Okay. But you have to have the awareness to do that, I would say. But I would also say the majority of people who do the likes of Love Island probably don't use it in the best way. You see guys like Josh Denzel, he does a lot of presenting for like BT, covered a lot of England stuff, and he got that off the back of being involved in reality TV. So some of the guys and girls that go on it do use it in a positive way. But
you would be ideal. You're a very young, good-looking guy.
I can do it.
You would go down a storm.
My girlfriend wouldn't allow it though.
Yeah, but just tell her that it's a big check you're getting, and then she might allow it.
That's true.
You've said to Tommy, I want Tommy to go in the jungle.
What age?
That would be good. I'd do that. 27.
22.
Well, there's
I don't feel 22 anymore.
looking after yourself and all this, Tommy. There's a lot to be said with that. And
Well, your videos are some of the fitness videos are brilliant. They're very, very tough. I thoroughly enjoyed watching them. Some great advice, fantastic advice. I hope that you continue to get followers who are looking at that from the point of view of you're helping them, because we talked there about doing something right. You're actually helping people realise here's some strength, speed, flexibility, also the whole thing about warm-ups and warm-downs and rest days. You know,
it's massive, Tommy.
I wish we had that when we were younger. You made this point on one of your videos about training properly in the lead up to a game. And he talks about how, the Thursday should be light training, Friday very little because the game's in the Saturday. When I was younger, Sam, I had this thing in my mind. It was a mental thing. I need to go for a run on the Friday night. And the game on the Saturday, I'll go for a run, 5-mile run. And I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought, I'm getting myself ready. And it wasn't until years later, Billy Davis, who's going to become the manager of a few teams down in South. I grew up with Billy, and he says to me, "What are you doing? You're taking all your strength out your body." And he also made the point about I used to 5-mile run, and he says to me, "If it wasn't like that, you don't run 5 miles. You sprint, you slow down. You sprint, you slow down." So he was off of that. Is it fartlek running? You call it?
Yeah.
Much more important for football, because what you were talking about was game-related training. And I think it was key. So I would thoroughly recommend anybody that hasn't watched your videos to watch them.
Thing is with yourself, Sam, is you've come through a generation where there was a real focus on the dietary side of it, the sports science, and even some of the basics of training, because you talk to footballers in the 80s and how they used to, prepare for games, etc. And I always used to laugh. Back in the day, we would buy the Shoot magazine and Match, and we would always have this interview with a player. What's your favourite pre-match meal? Steak and chips. And you're thinking steak and chips before a game. And I remember reading Ian Rush's autobiography. Now, bear in mind, these guys were winning European Cups in the 1980s. And they went for a couple of pints. They were playing Middlesbrough away. And it was a nighttime game. So they went down in the kind of morning. They booked into the hotel. And Graham Souness took the team out for a few pints. They then went back to the hotel, had a sleep, and then went and played the game that night. And Rush scored a couple of goals. So he's thinking, that must be all right. A couple of pints on the day of the game. So see, as a young guy, and you can tell us how this all kind of started for yourself, going into Celtic from a young age, you must have been conditioned into the diet and also the training regime, etc. It must be like something that's almost ingrained in you.
Yeah, I think it would have been really interesting to be a player kind of, maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago to see how different it is, because I think it's insanely different. Like it's massive. Fortunately, I was brought up through Celtic from the age of 12, right? So it is ingrained into you, but it's also ingrained into you if you let it be ingrained into you, So I was quite willing to learn as much as I could at all times. Reason for that, because I'm probably not the best football player in the world, technically, but I knew that if I did X, Y, and Z, 90% of players wouldn't be doing that, so I could gain an advantage on that side. So when you had the dietitian, the sports scientist, the yoga teacher, the coach, whoever it was, I would just be trying to take on as much as I could, and then go back and ask them questions. Okay, how much more can I learn or do, just to give myself the best chance, really. And I felt it worked, because I played at a good level. So for me, it did work. But in terms of everything I learned, see, unless you're in one of these academies, so unless you're in a Celtic or a Rangers or, one of the bigger academies, the majority of players don't get any of that information. And it actually shocked me when I started to post online, when I started to post the content. So a lot of it was training, nutrition, mindset, that sort of thing. How many players were kind of eating it up, because it surprised me how little some people or some young players knew. Because I grew up in that environment, you presume everyone knows what to do and how to do it. So that was one of the reasons why I started creating the content, because I was like, okay, I got this great support, but what about the next young female player, young male player? Like there's not a whole lot there unless you're lucky enough to be in one of these academies. So when I create the content online, it's always through 3 pillars: education, motivation, inspiration. So they're kind of tied together, but that's always the kind of idea I have it whenever or before I create something and put it out online. Because again, where it's like you get a lot of backlash from people on socials, but if I know deep down that there are good intentions behind what I post, it's not just, daft things, then I'm comfortable with, whatever feedback that I get. So yeah, the upbringing of Celtic was really special.
Talk me through some joining Celtic at 12. From where? Who?
Yeah.
School football. How did you get involved?
So interestingly, probably, I'm 27, so I'm not that old, but I was scouted in an old-fashioned way. So there wasn't what you have now with all these cameras. And so I remember I was speaking to an ex-Celtic scout who's now at Man City, and he said to me, Sam, we get at Man City, Celtic will probably do the same. We get to watch any player anywhere in the world at any time, because pretty much every game's recorded. So if there's a 15-year-old playing, in somewhere in South America, the chances are we've seen him. But when I got scouted at 12, so this is 16 years? I don't know, my maths is terrible, right? But back then it was through just scouts coming to games. Yeah. So I was playing locally in Clydebank for a team called Antonine, playing right wing, and I was 12, so I was almost a little bit older. So you can get scouted at any age or picked up, but a lot of the time it happens when you're probably 9, 10, 11. So at 12 I was thinking, this hopefully happens soon, because at that time your friends are getting picked up as well. But the Celtic scout at the time was a man called Charlie McGarvey, who's been at Celtic for a long, long time. And he came and watched me a couple of times for my club and liked what he saw. But the kind of turning point for me was he was also an English teacher. I think it's Our Ladies of St. Pat's over is that Helensburgh way kind of thing. We played their school team, and I played centre back that day, and he saw me and he was like, right, this guy's a centre back, this guy's a defender. So after that, brought into Celtic.
And then you were playing as a right winger?
As a winger, yeah, because I was fast and I was quite developed for my age at that age. But probably not, as I said, not technically, it wasn't like, wow, look at him on the ball kind of thing.
Okay.
So he saw me as a centre back, brought me into Celtic, was on trial for maybe 5 to 10 weeks, something along those lines. I can't quite remember. Played a game and just at the end of those 10 weeks, I think it was through the summer, and they took me over to Celtic Park straight after the game to sign, which was at the time like I remember you couldn't believe it. It was just it was a dream. At that age, it's any young kid's dream, right, to sign for a big club like Celtic.
And you're 12 at this time.
12 years old.
And is your parents, have they went with you, or are you?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because my parents aren't big football fans. They're not football people. I don't come from a football family.
Right.
Like, no one in my family's ever played football. So there's good and bad sides to that. Good in that I was never pushed, or like that. Quite often you see parents now kind of living vicariously through their kids. Like, they weren't the player, but they're going to make sure their kid was the player. So I never had that pressure, which was good. But my mum and dad were very, very supportive. You know, when you do, as a young player, when you do sign for a Celtic, you're training 4 or 5 times a week, playing at the weekend, and you need a parent or someone who looks after you to take
pick you up.
Huge commitment. It's a huge commitment for the family. So when you sign for Celtic as a 12-year-old boy, your full family signs for Celtic. You know, it's not just you. I've got an October birthday. Obviously, the season runs, you know, August to May. So I was 15. So my age group went and turned full time. But I was only 15 at the time, so I couldn't sign a contract until you were 16.
Okay.
So I had to wait until Christmas. But up until that point, the only thing Celtic could give you was expenses.
Right.
So it was £100 expenses per week, which again was brilliant. You know, 15, you're just getting money to play football and you leave school, sort of thing. I went through the full system. You go through full academy. I was in St Ninians, the school, so full immersion in the club. And the funny thing is, I left Celtic at 20, and I was really happy with my time there. Quite often what I find is, when players leave an academy after a long period of time, they can be a little bit bitter or negative towards a club. But I didn't feel like that, because I was like, I've done everything I can here. I've had amazing experiences, and I was like, it's not the right time for me. I'm just not good enough at this moment in time. So I never had any of those negative feelings, which I don't think is always common. You know, it's not a nice feeling when you do leave the club after so long, but I felt as though, I mean, you couldn't have had a better upbringing as a player really anywhere, unless you're maybe at one of these big kind of English clubs or something.
But 7 years ago, you're playing in the Youth Cup final at Hampden. You scored a goal, a great goal. You stop Rangers scoring a goal. I watched the game, and it was
we had a really successful period, because I played in a couple of those. But
you scored in both, didn't
I
you?
scored in both, and I never scored. I couldn't believe it.
Even for the big occasion.
Done good research, well done, because that's probably in the archive somewhere on YouTube. But
no, it's brilliant. The thing is, the Rangers player puts a ball across the 6-yard line, and it's a certain goal, and you slide in and stop a goal getting scored, and then you go up and score a goal. You know, so you've stopped a goal and you score a goal, and you appear to be
a standard.
You were the captain.
Yeah, I was a captain. Yeah.
Captain. I mean, so I suppose I'm interested, Sam, in how you go from that platform, captain of a successful youth team, because this isn't a captain of just any team. Captain with players like Tony Ralston playing, Kieran Tierney playing,
Talk more about
Mikey Johnston playing,
Calvin Miller.
There's Calvin Miller playing. There's also another guy that I want you to talk about, because I was creating press with him, but I've not seen him since. He was he must have been left wing back, I take it.
Aidan McElduff? No.
McElduff, that was it. Because it was a couple of times, absolute brilliant down the wing, fantastic. But I'm saying to myself, Jesus, we're always looking for left backs. This boy looks as though, but I've not heard about
Jack Aitchison as well, didn't you?
Jack Aitchison was there as well.
Nisbet.
Yeah. So in terms of all of those players, you're the captain of this team.
What happened?
What happened?
Well, see, on the back of that, Tommy, that team that you were in, what made you a good captain? What type of captain were you? Because some of the names, Tony Ralston, I keep saying this, Sam, if you've never watched Acsom, Tony's my favourite Celtic player.
Yeah.
Right? And the reason isn't because he's technical ability. It's because he's been on the scrap heap. He's been thrown on the scrap heap. Managers have refused to play him. But he just had something in here that he just stuck at it. And now he's enjoying the success. And he's not going to be everybody's favourite player, Tommy. And he comes on in the League Cup final. I thought he played really well in the League Cup final when he came on.
Scotland right back for.
But he's one of your contemporaries, and he's playing for Scotland and the Euros and stuff like that. But you were his captain.
Yeah, I mean, Tony's one that I get. I'm really impressed with him, and he does get a hard time occasionally. But see to go in and play, for example, those games at the Euros, 90 minutes, like, and actually manage it, because players hit cramp. It's seen not being playing consistently, then getting thrown into top level football. Thrown into any football game is difficult, never mind top end. So full credit to Tony. But to answer your question, I was the captain of that team because, interestingly, by the time I got to 1920, there was only 3 players left of my age group that were still there, and it was me, Kieran Tierney, and it was Aidan Nisbet. No, it wasn't Aidan Nisbet. I think it was Jamie McCart. So there was 3 of us left. So, you start with a group of 20 players at 15, 16, and by the time you get 4 or 5 years later, pretty much everyone's gone.
Wow.
Some of them moved on to other clubs, but some of them just kind of fall away, which is just the nature of football. But in terms of...
So you're the older guys in this team?
In this team,
3.
yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I was captain, because I was the most senior in that young squad. I was also probably, I led by example, as I mentioned earlier. I was big on, doing extra work and just being very diligent and professional and having high standards. So I think that's probably another reason. And then to answer your question on being involved in that team, the team that I played in, I would say probably all of them are still playing at a good level. KT's playing at a good level. Tony's playing. Connor, the goalkeeper, Connor has. I'm not even sure where he is, but he plays for Northern Ireland national team. So they're all still playing. Calvin's still playing. Aidan Nisbet's still playing. Hopefully, that Falkirk get promoted and the two of them end up in the Premiership. That would be really good to see. I think. Well, essentially what happened was I left Celtic and I went to Dundee United for 2 years. And at the time, I had an agent who we were very confident I would go to Dundee United, championship team, top end. I just spent the previous season on loan at Dumbarton, who were bottom end. I'd played really well. So I went there with the intention of...
Excuse me, what position were you playing at this time?
Right back.
So right back. So because you seem to be in that team, you seem to be centre back.
And the Celtic team, yeah, I was. So basically, I would say it's also just the nature of who you have at your disposal. So Tony was a right man, out and out right back. I was a right back, but I also came to Celtic as a centre back. So I play centre back. So you miss out on being able to showcase yourself in that right back position, because I remember in that final, after that game, I'm pretty sure Tony, Connor Hazard, the keeper, and maybe even Calvin, Brendan Rodgers, I think, then kind of took them on after that game. So I would say in terms of playing style, me and Tony aren't dissimilar. Tony's not known for being like a wizard on the ball, neither was I. Both quite physical, athletic players. But again, maybe so. Tony's probably got not a better mindset, but maybe more resilient in terms of the setbacks that he's had. He also got that little sniff when, you're both maybe competing for that opportunity. He got that one over me, essentially, and then went on to play. So I left the club at 20, went to Dundee United, still a very good move with the intention of progressing. At the time, I remember...
Who was your manager there at Dundee United?
Shabba Laszlo.
Right.
So essentially that's where it all started to change and go wrong for me with football.
Why?
Just because it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. So I left Celtic thinking, okay, I'm going to be a footballer for the next 15 years. So at the time, Wolves under 23s were interested, but my agent had said, if you go to Dundee United as a first team player, Wolves first team might want you at the end of the season. If you have a good season, you get promoted with Dundee United. You've seen it with Andy Robertson and a lot of players going in at Dundee United. It was a really good platform. So went there. Within 6 months, Shabba Laszlo had been sacked. He also Dundee United also signed 9 players that season, and he didn't know any of our names. So it was just, I was 20 years old, so you're still not really sure how football clubs operate and stuff. And looking back now, it wasn't in a good place, the club. They hadn't got promoted the previous season, which killed them. And then he was still the manager, so he's starting off on the back foot. The fans aren't a fan of him. And he got sacked. Robbie Nielsen came in, and then I ruptured my ACL within 6 months of signing. So I signed a 2-year contract, and then that was 12 months out of football for me. And
see that in terms of setback,
yeah,
you're talking about resilience. But as well as the physical aspect of knowing and fine-tuning yourself into knowing what the recuperation's going to be, how difficult is it mentally for you, son?
To be honest, this might sound strange, but I actually didn't feel so. See, before I ruptured my ACL, I was out the picture at Dundee United because Shabba Laszlo had gone. Robin Nielsen had come in, and he had his own. I wasn't one of his players. He had his own kind of ideas and what he wanted to do. And I remember that again. This just shows you how tough football can be. So this is before I ruptured my ACL, having a bit of a shitty start, right? Because it's not gone the way you wanted it to go. The manager's been sacked, etc. I remember he pulled me into his office. Robin Nielsen pulled me into his office and said, "Oh, you're doing that law stuff, aren't you?" So I'm studying an open uni degree alongside. I've still not finished that, by the way. It's the longest open uni degree I've ever done in my life. And he said, "You're studying that law stuff, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you think that would be a better option for you?" I'm 20 years old, right? And I'm young, I'm naive. You're very also probably kind of vulnerable, really. Like if someone says something, you almost take it at full value.
Did you move to Dundee?
I'd moved to Dundee.
So
I'm living
on your own.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's already all these things.
Vulnerable is the word then, isn't it?
See, when somebody puts that notion in your mind as well, and someone who's got that experience in football. I mean, he had played for Scotland, Nielsen, and he's a manager, and he's putting that notion in your mind. Do you then start to doubt yourself?
Nah, I've always backed myself.
Good.
But it just doesn't give you any confidence when you go and step out the pitch. You feel as though, you've just got no chance, right? Yeah. And at that age, I thought that was a really difficult thing. And I didn't necessarily you don't necessarily have anyone to turn to at that point. Like your family or like your mum and dad who aren't football people. They say, "Oh, it's all right. Don't worry about it. Like, it's fine." Kind of.
But your agent, was he able to give you advice or?
So at that point, I then ruptured my ACL. So quite quickly after that conversation, I ruptured my ACL. So everything goes on hold for 12 months.
How did that happen? Was that a training or?
It was a friendly game, just
with Dundee United.
With Dundee United, just went to tackle someone, and my ACL just happens. Not a lot you can do about it. So that was 12 months out. But the one thing that I did realise at the time, I was like, I've came from Celtic, just left Celtic, and my last season, Brendan Rodgers was good. He brought me in for a couple of meetings, and we'd had discussions one-on-one, which I thought was pretty unique and special because I wasn't part of really of his plans, but he took the time to, a young player, spend 5-10 minutes with them, having a chat, and I just thought that was really good man management. And then you go to another club, and then the manager says to you, "Do you want to go and you should be studying rather than playing football," kind of thing. And I'm just like, I don't think that's good man management at 20 years old. That's what I'm thinking. And I know that's not good man management now because you should never say that to a young person. You should try and build them up at all times. And a lot of what I do now is probably, I try to be a bit of a support system for players because at that time, you look around, you don't have there's nothing, particularly really good to support you. Your friends support you, family supports you, teammates support you to some extent, but no one that's kind of impartial and external. So that's what I try and do now with a lot of the stuff. I try and kind of be that support system for young players, I suppose.
Can I take you back to Celtic on a few points? The first one you've mentioned is Kieran Tierney. Kieran Tierney is back in the news, Tommy, in relation to a sensational return to Celtic. Obviously, homegrown talent. We all saw him developing into this fantastic player, and he gets his big move down south. What about the Kieran Tierney you knew, the young man that you knew, in terms of his attitude towards training, his commitment towards Celtic? What was your memories of Kieran?
He's a good lad. We'd gone well with Katie. I was in school with him because we all went to St Ninians, so I was with him. He was in there when I signed at 12.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but see this. So see this St Ninians thing. Is that what happens when you sign with Celtic? They send you to St Ninians. Is it right? Okay, I didn't realise that. Sorry. So you're all doing your education together because you have signed with Celtic. Right. Okay.
So that we were the third year to go in. So the program had been running, the partnership with St Ninians had been running for 3 years. So we were the third year to go in, and we went in at third year. But I think now they go in from first year, which is probably a better idea because they integrate better. But yeah, so you're like one big family from the age of 12 up until 20. And Katie was a great guy. But interestingly, you mentioned Aidan McElduff. At one point, this story's probably been told, but Aidan was ahead of KT for, I'd say, 4 years. And at 16, I can't remember if it was, I think we were, Aid McElduff and myself, we were maybe away with Scotland, but then there were still enough players at Celtic to continue the fixtures. And I think in one of those weeks, KT had started performing really well.
Right.
And then, again, it's a bit of a time ago, maybe 10, 11 years ago, but I remember coming back one pre-season and it was like KT was just a different person. Same guy off the pitch, but on the pitch, it was like something had just changed. And the best example I always give was we were doing a possession drill in training. So it was like 6v6 and there was 3 small goals on each side and each team had to score into the small goals. And it was like 3 rounds of 4 minutes. And for the 4 minutes, he was non-stop. We would take a break for a minute, rest, recover. He'd be on the ground like completely out of breath. I'd be thinking, and it wasn't because he was unfit, it was just because he'd given so much in those 4 minutes. And we go back in, he'd do the same again. 60 seconds off, he'd be lying on the ground like destroyed. He'd get back up and he'd go again. And but then he did that every single day.
Right.
And I was just like, the mindset.
And that's because you think while you are away representing Scotland, he gets the chance that he maybe wasn't getting because the other boy was he the first choice left back there at that time. Because as I say, I'm watching that game, the BP Cup final at Hampden, and this boy looks fantastic. So I'm not surprised that he was at that time the choice because his cross is outstanding.
Yeah, and I suppose in a way, Katie's probably using that, like he's probably a bit angry as well. You know, he's like, I know I'm good enough to be playing ahead or whatever. Two of them are brilliant, but then Katie just,
is the other boy still playing?
No, no. He left at 18, 19 and went down to Peterhead, but never. It's not that he's a bad player. He's a kit man at Scotland now, and he joins in training. And he always tells me, he's like, I was one of the best players today. I'm like, I bet you were. Of course you were.
This is the thing, Sam. You mentioned mindset, right? And you talk about education when you go into an academy. I'm guessing the education you're going to get after 8 years at Celtic is going to be incredible. You can take it anywhere. And you would hope you can take it anywhere in life. So people like Aidan, who's no longer in the game, I'm sure can still use a lot of what he's learned from Celtic's Academy. But this mindset thing, that must be one of the most difficult things to tap into because a lot of that comes from within. And Kieran Tierney, something clicked during that period and he was never the same. He became a bit of a monster after that, right?
Yeah, no, he did. But it was funny though, he had that inside him, but he also modelled himself on like to Scott Brown because you know the stories. Brownie would always go out with shorts t-shirt on. KT would then go outside every single day with shorts t-shirt on, no matter the weather kind of thing. And again, it's just that's an external kind of showcase of the mindset that he has. Everyone else gets snood, hats, gloves on, but he wanted it so badly. And the biggest thing for me is you get great players who, you know, great in training, great in games, but the intensity that KT brought every single day, which is why he's at Arsenal, because you have to have that every single day. And I honestly think it's almost impossible for normal people to bring that kind of enthusiasm and intensity into their life or their job every single day. But KT did, and that's why he is where he is. But the mindset thing's an interesting one because I think it's more than just what happens on the pitch. It's off the pitch as well. You know, you don't always know what goes on in players' kind of personal lives. And I think that is a lot of the time the reason why players don't perform one season or, you know, for a period of time. And I don't think people always realise that. Like fans, I don't think they always realise that. You know, players get a hard time. It's like, he's shit now. But, okay, so look what's happened in his private life, you know?
We do take that for granted, I think. We just think they're robots, they're machines. Why are they not playing well? We don't consider what might be going on behind the scenes. We call our show a Celtic State of Mind, and a big part of that is the mentality. And we always talk about this mentality. It's almost become a buzzword. What does it actually mean? And what I constantly say, Sam, and this probably goes back to the first team that I ever watched, which included Tommy Burns, who's on your T-shirt, and Paul McStay. The Centenary team had this winning mentality, a never say die attitude, which a lot of people focused on when Ange was the manager, but Celtic have had it for years. And I always think that when a Celtic team has got the core of young guys like yourself who have come through the ranks and know what the mentality is and what the expectations are, we'll be fine. I honestly think that. And I think we've got it just now. My only concern is we don't have any of the next generation coming through to take over from Callum McGregor, Jamesy Forrest, Tony Ralston. What is the mentality? What is a winning mentality? Is that something that if you're taken in young enough and it's drilled into you every single day, it just becomes almost like routine, normal? And if you leave the club, you then can't understand why other players don't have that.
Yeah. I mean, my first look at that was like Scott Brown and Bruni, like the way he carried himself around the training ground and in games. He just did everything right and everything that you'd expect of someone in his position. And standards on a daily basis never drop below being, up here. And I think then it's similar to like I've watched like the Michael Jordan documentary and stuff like that. And if you have a couple of guys in a squad who are up here, the rest of the squad naturally want to come up with you. And I think that's the likes of KT modelled himself on it. I think Cal McGregor probably modelled himself off from Bruni as well, in terms of just that mindset and attitude. But as you said, I'm not in the Celtic kind of training ground and stuff on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully there's other young players that are looking at the likes of Tony and seeing how resilient he is and using that as inspiration and taking it on board and being like, okay, I have to be like that. If you don't play for 10 games or whatever happens, doesn't matter. Just be ready when the time comes, kind of thing.
Yeah. The other thing that I always wonder about, Tommy, and you will have seen players like this who fall by the wayside often, is you're a very young guy, you're going into Celtic, the facilities are all there, and you're in many ways being pandered to. I know that all the hard work's going on, but people are looking up to you. Charlie Mulgrew spoke to us recently about this and how you think you're a footballer when you're not actually playing first team football because you're being treated like a footballer. And you're travelling maybe away with Scotland under 17s, under 19s, etc. What's the biggest risk at that point? Because it must be hard to keep your feet on the ground.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you. And I think it's a hard one. Some players, the personality is, don't know, they take things for granted. I mean, I never did because you're very aware that you're a youth player. I remember the kit man that we had, Hugh McGovern, still there as well. He always said to us, boys, none of you are first team players until you played 50 first team games.
Wow.
So that always stuck in my head.
Wow, 50.
But it's having guys like that around the club that set standards and expectations. I was 16 at the time. I was thinking, right, okay, that's what it is. That's what you have to do.
Mm.
That's how you kind of change mindsets of young players. I think by having people like him and John Clark and stuff, two of them are best of friends. You would have guys like them to chat to after training, and they were almost like the kind of wisdom. They were trying to drop bits of wisdom into conversations, because if you didn't have guys like that, people that have been there and done it and seen everything, then you run the risk of having a team of 17-year-olds in the reserve squad who think they're footballers.
Mm-hmm.
Thing is, well though, you've got to also take into account, Tommy, it is a group of 17-year-old laddies, and there's going to be elements of that where they want to have a good laugh and a good time, and I'm pretty sure that you've got to have a bit of freedom as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
as long as you
100%. You can't be. Yeah, you're spot on.
Paul John, I can remember. I mean, this has gone back a lot further. Obviously, I'm much older than you, Sam. But we played with Pollock United, and in my day, Easter Craigs, Pollock United, Glasgow United, and Celtic Boys Club were the teams that were always competing for the cups and the leagues. And there was something about Celtic, because they all turned up in their blazers. They all seemed bigger. They all seemed more disciplined. They all seemed better behaved. I don't mean on the park they were hard, but better behaved. So I do think there is something that's instilled early doors when you join that club, that there are standards to be met. And I think that's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I remember playing against Boyd Chalmers, Paul Chalmers. I remember one of the McStay brothers, Willie. So they were all in and around the team at that time. And they were so well disciplined, and they just, you looked up to them. So there was definitely an aura that was there, Sam, What about you when you're at this stage, who's your confidant? Who's your best pals at the time? Who would you confide in and things like that?
I think because with Celtic, you were obviously also fortunate enough. You did a lot of travelling as a young player. You'd be all over the world. you know, you spend more time with the boys in the team than you did your family, kind of thing. So you'd become very close, almost extended family, like brothers, right? So you would naturally just gravitate towards people that were more kind of similar to you in terms of, you know, you had Irish boys in the squad. I always remember having really good conversations with these guys, and you talked about what you wanted to achieve and where you wanted to go, and everyone's obviously reaching for the same goal, right? You want to play for Celtic, but my time there, I always had a very positive team. They were all good lads, and I think if you're not, you quite quickly, you know, don't get pushed out, but you can't, you just leave because you're not a good fit, sort of thing. So you don't tend to have generally everyone that's there is, you know, high standards, gonna work hard, good players, good mindset, kind of thing. The guys that aren't, they're not there for long.
They won't last. The thing as well, though, Sam, is as well as coming through the ranks and getting that great education in the academy, and being surrounded with these good people like John Clark, Lisbon Lion, an absolute legend. You know, everybody's looked up to him for generations. You managed to get on the park and play for Celtic under Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah. But also, we'll also touch on Danny McGrain as well. Danny was a good help to me when I was there. Obviously, Danny's a fullback. I was a fullback. Probably saw how much I was struggling. So he shared his knowledge. And I remember doing sessions with Danny after training sometimes. And he obviously Danny's time, there wasn't sports scientists and stuff like that, but now there was. So everything was really managed in terms of the time you spent on the pitch training, because as you said, it was geared towards, okay, doing a little bit less as you got closer to game day. I remember one occasion we'd finished training session and Danny must have seen me probably crossing it out for goal kicks or throw-ins, right? And he said, Sam, Mum will go inside to the indoor hall at Lennoxtown and we'll work on crossing and your passing. I was like, brilliant, let's do it, kind of thing. So it was great, but we spent, I think it was 2 hours.
Wow.
Boys had lunch, boys were starting to go home, and I could see the sports scientists looking through the window at Lennoxtown like, it's time to go. But I was like, I'm with Danny McGrain. I can't say stop. We stop when Danny says stop, kind of thing.
But obviously, what an education.
It was amazing though, and he shared his knowledge and lessons and the way he played and things that he did with me, and those are things that I'll never forget. You know, special memories.
That's so important for me, Tommy. The fact that Danny's still there, John Clark's still there. You mentioned Willie McStay. He's been there for years and years working within the youth. And I think that's important at a club like Celtic as well, so that people know what the fabric of the club's all about. Brendan Rodgers is a massive hero of mine. I love the fact that he came back and he's obviously completing his unfinished business that he had to attend to. But he chose you. You played for him. The game was against Leon. It was a pre-season friendly. And you wore the jersey for real when you ran onto Celtic Park, Sam. Talk us through that. I mean, you replaced a player who many may have forgotten. Ibu Kouassi was the name of the player that you came on for. Yeah, so talk about going onto that park, you know, and living the dreams of millions worldwide, because you did it.
Yeah. So I always feel like I almost got there, because it's not quite classed as your full debut. You know, it's not a competitive game, but it was a friendly. So to even get to that level, you need to have done some things right on your way. So I think I'd had a pretty good season the year before. I'd been out on loan at Dumbarton. I'd came back in pre-season. Obviously, been training well. A couple of sessions with the first team, and was part of the squad for that game. And Memphis Depay was in the opposing team. I never started, which I was disappointed with. Came on at half time though. Fortunately, he went off as I came on. Not because he knew I was coming on, but it would have been nice to play against someone of that stature, you know. But they still had incredible players. I think we got beat quite heavily, but that experience was incredible. I think there was maybe over 20,000 fans there. And just so what we did was, that was my first experience of being a part of the first team squad. So we travelled to the Dakota out at, where is it? Where's the one outside of town? Eurocentral, is it? Something like that. So, you know, you travelled with the team there, you had a meal. Next morning, you had breakfast with the team. You came down for the team meeting. Obviously, Brendan's given the team talk, and it's the first time I experienced, okay, this is what it could be like, you know, on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And go to Celtic Park, you're in the home dressing room getting changed with all the players. It's quite surreal, but you try and act as
who was in the team at that time?
well, you had Scott Brown, you had Lustig, it was incredible. To be honest as well, that Celtic team was a hard one to break into because they had incredible players. Had likes of Van Dijk and Jason Denayer playing. Lustig was a right back. It was a left back, probably KT actually. So it was a really strong Celtic team. But I remember being in the dressing room getting ready that day, and I'm just thinking, right, just pretend this is normal, just because you don't want to.
Kuhasi, was he no a midfielder?
Kuhasi was, but I think there were a couple of changes at half time.
Right. So did you come on and play in midfield, or did you?
No.
Right, okay.
That wouldn't have been a good idea.
Right. So you come on and played
Right back.
Right back, okay.
Come on and played it right back. It was incredible just being on the pitch, you know.
How did you play?
Did okay. It was 45 minutes. We got beat 5-1, I think. Do you know the score? I'm not sure.
No.
Was it 4-0?
Yeah.
So Liam Henderson was in midfield as well, actually, that day, I remember. Beaton was playing centre back when I came on. He was beside me at the time.
Right.
So it was an incredible experience. But then that was not because of the way I played in the game, but I just wasn't in his Brendan Rodgers' plans that year. So in fact, no, I then went on loan after that. But
So you then go on loan to Dumbarton then?
Yeah.
Right. So
that was my final year at Celtic.
Right. But
It seems almost when you look at the timeline that's a progression, though, isn't it? You make your debut and then they put you away maybe on a development loan move.
Yeah. Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Because also Celtic don't know who's going to be the one that, you know, just it can happen very quickly in football. So essentially, by that age, you become more of a valuable asset to them. So obviously, they then had Tony, they had Darnell Fisher, they had Mikael Lustig. So at the end of that year, it's like, okay, we don't need a fourth right back kind of thing. So it was a difficult team to break into. But again, they keep you at that age because they never know, you might become the next Kieran Tierney or.
So when you go on loan to Dumbarton, you're still thinking,
100%.
if I do well here, I could still break into the team.
Yeah. And then because I had a good season, I played with some good players there. Ian Durant was the assistant manager. Steve Aitken was the manager. I loved it. It was my first taste of proper first team football. And I was like, okay, I can do this. Because you see at that age, for me anyway, you're like, okay, I'm 19, 20. You're still not 100% sure if you can do it. You know, you can play reserve football, but you're playing just against guys your age. Can I do it against men that played 10 years of football?
Yeah.
And I could. So that gives you more evidence and the confidence. Okay, like I can go back and do this at Celtic potentially. But it wasn't to be. But then I was like, okay, it's Dundee United Championship, same league. I'll be able to do it again, kind of thing.
There's a few things that constantly come up, regardless of who we speak to who are in football. And generally, the older generation, Sam, will say that the bridge between kind of youth football and first team football, it used to be reserve team. So you had a hybrid of experience and young guys coming through. And a lot of them say it was a really good platform for the development from that youth player to the first team. And a lot of them think it's missing. Scottish football's missing that link now. And obviously we've got the B team sitting in the 5th tier. What's your thoughts on that? Did you think that leap was too big a gap? Or do you think that a player like Kieran Tierney showed that it can be done? Or is he just an anomaly?
Yeah, KT's probably a bit of an anomaly, right? You don't get many KTs, but I think when I played for Celtic at the time, it was under 20s, you didn't have the B team, and you were allowed 6 or 7 overage players. So quite often, half the team was first team players. So you got that kind of blended experience. Like I remember Griffiths playing with us all the time. Paddy Roberts used to play with us.
Wow.
Kouassi. I thought Paddy Roberts was brilliant. He was one of my favourite players to watch.
How skillful.
I know.
How skillful. He's just phenomenal, wasn't he?
Just naturally talented.
Phenomenal.
Beaton would play. Pretty sure Charlie Mulgrew played a couple of games. Quite often it was used for the players that were coming back from injury. So you got an experience, but again, it's not the same because you're not playing against these guys. You're playing with them. But I think making that transition into first team football, like just let it be I think it's fine being a baptism of fire kind of thing. You know, me stepping into that Dumbarton changing room with these guys in their mid to late 20s, early 30s, you feel like, because I've gone from being the oldest player in my changing room to the youngest player.
Cool, yeah.
It's quite a
hell of
shock.
a transition.
And then you're also turning up to Dumbarton, the Rock, the changing facilities and environment and the way people are communicating and stuff. You know, it's proper, it's serious. These guys, I remember one of the players at the time going mental after a game because I think it was only a 50 quid or 100 quid win bonus, but he was like, we need this. Like this makes a difference to us. And he was going mental at some of the other players because they didn't maybe seem to care. But then you realise, okay, this is the difference between some of these guys having enough money at the end of the month and not. So I thought it was an amazing learning experience dropping
Not
into
the
that
best of parts
championship.
either.
No, not at Christmas, January time.
Played in that a few
The
times.
Rock. The mud bath.
Oh, mud bath. Totally
Completely mud bath.
Played several charity games in it. Something big, but a mud bath.
Character building, Sam.
Completely.
There's so much more to cover here. And I've spoken in the past again about players who sometimes abuse social media to the point where they're pushing for transfers and all this kind of stuff. They'll stick out an emoji on Instagram and all this cryptic messages, but you've used it positively. Is it something you were always interested in? Because you've seen the advent or the growth of social media, but you've used it in a big way. I won't call you an influencer, but obviously you're a content
I leave
creator.
that to Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy's the influencer. You're the content creator, and you've used that. One of the things that really captured my imagination, and we'll get back to when you left the game. You were out the game for 2 years, and you basically said, I'm going to do this, right? And you documented it, so there's no hiding place. I'm going to get back into football. At some point in the next year, I'm going to get back into senior football. Talk us through your mindset. What was going through your head, and also that journey as well?
Yeah, so I'd stopped playing football at 24 years old because I'd fallen out of love with it. Ever since I got that ACL injury at Dundee United, I just had never felt the same way I had before when I left Celtic. That fixation with becoming a professional footballer started to kind of fade a little bit, but also because I had a lot more time on my hands and I started doing other things. It was the first time in my life where I had a pause from football and I was able to maybe just try things that you maybe had naturally had a kind of, or you were drawn towards. So I suppose it was kind of storytelling in a way through football. I was doing a lot of coaching. I was creating these videos and stuff like that. So I started to really enjoy that side, and as those 2 years went by, I managed to turn them into a business, which was great because I loved doing it. And I suppose that was one of the things why I stopped playing football as well, was because I remember being at Dundee United and there was boys who were 27, 28, and they were saying to me, Sam, I have no idea where I'm going to be next year. I don't know if I'm going to have another football contract. And I was 20, 21, and I was like, really? Is that what the next 10 years could be like for me? I was like, I'm not sure if I wanted to live like that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to see if I can do something, set something up, spend a lot of time on it, and then if I want to return to football, I will. So got to 26 and managed to build something where, I didn't need football, because a lot of players end up just playing football because they need it. They need that money still, because they've not done anything else, or they've not started anything else quite yet. So I managed to set up a business, and then I thought, okay, right, I'm 26, I'm going to give football another go, because I felt like, okay, I can play, not because I need it, but because I want to try it again, and I wanted to make an effort and try and play somewhere else. Because during those 2 years, it was the first time I had proper breaks from football, so I did a bit of traveling. I went to South America, volunteered football coaching. I was in the favelas and stuff, and it was incredible. And I was like, wow, look at this big world out here. Because when you play full-time football, you have a week off or 2 weeks off in May, and that's it. So you're very restricted. So I was loving this freedom that I had. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try and pair up the content with the football and the traveling. So went over to Dubai, Australia, and then ended up in Sweden. And all these trips were trialing, experiencing new cultures, seeing what the kind of way of life was, and living conditions and environments were in these different places. Ended up in Sweden, which was a lot closer to home than I thought I was going to end up, and a lot colder as well than home. A lot wetter, more snow. So I ended up in Sweden with a team called Ljungskile. That was incredible, because I'd played abroad a lot of times. You'd play in all these tournaments, but I'd never actually been ingrained in a team from a different place. So I was just part of this Swedish family, and they were quite a remote village of 2,000 people north of Gothenburg. So I was fully immersed in this kind of just unique Swedish football bubble for 3 or 4 months, and I had an incredible time. It was really, really enjoyable. But I suppose I got the opportunity only from harnessing the power of social media in a positive way, as you said. So it can be used in a positive way, which is good.
But how satisfying was that, Sam, to say, right, I'm going to set myself a goal of getting back in and actually doing it? And you said, am I right in saying you were going to do it in a calendar year?
Yeah,
You've done it 120 days?
120 days. So I gave myself a year. To be honest with you, I could have done it in a day, because I remember a team in Scotland phoned me up and said, do you want to come and sign for us? And I was like, honestly, no, I've done it. I've done it in this league already. Like, I don't want to do it again. I want something different. So I just wanted to blend the kind of traveling and seeing what else was out there, because I also wanted to showcase to other players that you don't have to just be stuck in this Scottish football bubble. You can actually go and play somewhere else and have a really nice life. So I wanted to show that side of it as well. And it's funny because I had lots of messages from players, good players as well, players that are playing for this national team, who said, "Can you get me to move out to that place?" I'm like, listen, you can sort your own move out, but it just shows you that there's a lot of players who don't have the knowledge or don't have the connections, or maybe not even thought about it until they see it, and it's like, okay, I could do that too. And that's something that I wanted to show, that it is possible. Because I'm not the best player in the world, but you can almost, if you're willing to, you can almost go and play anywhere you want, really, if you're willing to put yourself out there.
The lifestyle, I mean, you mentioned Henderson before. He was a bit of a trailblazer in recent times when it comes to young footballers going over to Italy and doing so well. Was it Liam you played with, yeah?
Yeah, he was a year older than me, and he seems to really kind of bought into the culture. For some reason, a lot of Scottish players are heading over to Italy, right? So,
well, go back to something you said earlier, which blew my mind a wee bit with regards to, I know that they've got these scouting systems now where they can look at data, etc. I didn't realise that a lot of that was video data based on underage games, 15, 14-year-olds. So you're telling me that there's cameras at these games all over Europe?
All over the world,
systems,
all over the world, fed into systems. So basically, the stat was that the city scout, who's ex-Celtic, formerly Celtics, had said to me that if a player, say, the other side of the world, is 15 or 16 and they've played a season of first-team football, wherever they are in the world, that'll get flagged to us, and we'll be able to watch all those highlights and all those games. So it's basically almost like technology that's bringing these young talent. That's why you get like some Man City, because they've got so much resources. They can spend the money on having cameras everywhere. I think there are companies that basically have these cameras everywhere, and clubs pay subscriptions to have access to it. But that's why big clubs like Man City find these unique talents in the middle of nowhere and sign them, because they've watched them. They've watched them play a full season at 15, 16, and these guys get flagged. Celtic probably do something similar, to be honest.
It's incredible that we're there. We're at that point with technology, Tommy. It really is. I was also going to ask you, Sam, you've got these young guys who, very quickly can become footballers. What prepares you for the adulation of being a footballer and people want to come and speak to you and get your autograph and hang about you and all this kind of stuff? The media side of it, because you got interviewed after that cup final that Tommy was talking about. I mean, what prepares you for that? Or does nothing prepare you for that? And then obviously the social media aspect as well. Do clubs have this as part of the academy training? Do you get taught how to deal with media? Because, media training's a tough gig. Yet you guys are just expected to be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you get media training so far in that you do bits of Celtic TV stuff when you're a part of the youth player there. Maybe there's stuff now, because I think social media is so much more prominent now than even it was when I was 14, 15, 16. So I would be surprised if they had things in place where it's like maybe a seminar to show players, okay, see if you post something now when you're 14 years old, make sure it's not going to cause you problems 10 years down the line,
Yeah.
Which is often the case. And it's just, you see all the time with players, if something will get flagged that they've posted 10, 15, 20 years ago kind of thing. So you just have to be careful with it, I think. But in terms of getting you ready for dealing with, fans and even first-team players now, a lot, like, for example, Cal McGregor, I don't think he's on any social media because of, he probably doesn't even want to get involved in it, because it can be such a kind of negative place and toxic place for players. There's nothing that prepares you for it. And that sometimes can make or break a player as well.
I was going to ask that, the negative side of it. Do you think it affects a player? I remember Ryan Christie getting sent off against Livingston, and we ended up getting beat 2-0. And the flack he got was embarrassing to the point where he removed all his socials. And I'm thinking to myself, again, going back to that thing where we just think players are commodities and they're robots and they're mechanical. But social media, the negative side of that, you're telling us it will affect players.
100%, yeah. They all go on and read it like they all would, Some, if the best way to stay away from it is just don't have it. But because it's such a useful side of players can make a lot of money from it as well now through sponsorships and having it. So it's important for them to have it so they can tap into those things. I think every player should have it. not necessarily managed by them, managed by maybe a company or someone else, because they can utilize it to their advantage in terms of building their personal brand or image.
Yeah.
But the downside to that is you then get to read, you know, the millions of comments that of people abusing you, which is it's horrible.
It is horrible, but there's a strange thing that we do as human beings, Tommy. We read it.
Yeah.
And then you might get something really positive,
I'll be
Sam, but
honest,
you focus on the
Walter,
negative one.
I think it's stupid to read it. I just block.
You're good at dealing with it, Tommy.
it's-
You're very good at it.
Well, I started doing that recently because I got my first bit of abuse when I started posting this. I was called it the Return to Pro journey over the year. First time I got some real bad abuse, and I would just go to block the accounts. But I think that's one of the best ways to deal with it. But again, though, I would you just read the most negative comment, and that'd be the one that sticks in your mind.
Exactly.
There's
That's the point. That's what you just said. I mean, during the Scottish referendum campaign, I toured the whole of Scotland, done several 150 meetings or something. So obviously, Twitter, as it was then, it was, you know, this is 2014, so Twitter was big in those days. It's maybe not as influential now, but massive, and I get massive following because of that, over 60,000, blah, blah, blah. But the idea of engaging with comments, yeah, as soon as I see a negative comment, I just block it. I don't even read the rest of it, I just block it and move on, block, block, block. Because what upsets the abusers more than anything else is not been taken seriously.
Shut them down.
It's not been, they want you to reply. They want you to engage because they're sitting in their wee house, in their wee room, in a dark place, and they've got nothing else in their life. They just want to be negative and attack you. And if you don't engage, they go mental. They feel angry. You've ignored them. Ignore them. You need to do that because you know you get a bit of abuse for that.
Now and again.
But the thing is, they're willing to go back and forth with you
all night,
hours on end.
All night.
They wouldn't stop. That's the thing that scares me. I'm like, this is insane.
You'll never get the last word. Nah, you'll never get the last one. I love your lists on LinkedIn. I do love your lists on LinkedIn, right? And you listed 6 things you wish you knew as a footballer 10 years ago, right? And I found it really interesting because you're basically going back to you as a youth player and saying, right, don't worry about the designer toilet bag and stuff like that. So talk us through some of these things that you wish you'd known back then.
Yeah, I suppose again that's just all these things that I post about is just things you learn just from being part of it. But I think one of those was don't buy the designer car, don't buy the designer wash bag because you don't need it. But honestly, I had to do that to then realize, okay, this is not what you need to do, sort of thing. So I think a lot of players, young players that are 17, 18, 19 will read that. Probably wouldn't even read that. They would just think, oh, whatever, this old guy's posted stuff. Like, it's almost like kind of something that your dad would say, your granddad would say. But I think those posts that I put out, it's more just to kind of just suggest things in young players' heads to maybe get them thinking twice about doing certain things, you know, whether it be the standards that they hold themselves to or the things that they buy with their money, and just having a bit more thought behind the things that they do. Because again, I don't think there was never really anyone, you know, sharing that when I was growing up. Not that I had easy access to it. Benefit now is it's easy for me to share that and for people to see it. Even 10 years ago or 15 years ago, wasn't necessarily that easy to see or to hear from other people that had maybe done or been through that Celtic Academy, you know.
The other thing as well then it would raise for me is, as well as creating content, you know, that kind of life coach aspect of that, Sam. Does that exist in an academy? Do you have someone who would give you that type of advice?
No, but coaches naturally take on that role, I think, regardless if they're the sports scientist or the nutritionist or the kit man. You know, every coach that was in there they had more than one role. They weren't just the kit man or the sports scientist or the physio. They were also your life coach, therapist, you know. So they listen to all your problems. Probably physios and kit man got it most because they're a bit more relaxed. You know, if you said something to the coach, you might think, okay, he might use this against me in the next game or whatever. Whereas you could confide in guys like the kit men and stuff like that. They would be the ones that would help you through those tougher moments.
What about the current team then, Sam? I mean, do you, as part of your coaching side of things, do you do a wee bit of analysis as well? Do you look at the team just now and think we could do with this or that as strengthening? If January's coming up, I mean, obviously you're going to give us an exclusive today about KT's coming back because you've spoke to him.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm trying to get him to do an interview with me, but he doesn't do much on media stuff. He's been quite quiet. Obviously, he's had a hard time with injuries. But I was really glad to see him back.
Did you watch a game?
I never watched.
I watched it. I watched it.
Came on at
I
60
watched it.
minutes or so?
No, he played for 60 minutes.
Oh, he played for 60 minutes.
Yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't normally pay attention and watch a game. I'd probably watch the Liverpool game rather than the Arsenal game. But because KT was playing, I thought I'm going to watch it. And I'll tell you what, you wouldn't have thought he'd been away, mate. It was some of his first time passing was fantastic. The width he gave the team was fantastic. He put in a absolute stunning cross for Sterling, who should have broke his duck, who should have scored his goal, and had it off the keeper, and then he had it off the bar, come off the keeper, and he had it off the bar. But I thought he had a great game. He went down, but I think it was cramp. I don't think it was a
He's always have a
I think it was cramp.
Hopefully it was.
So having no played for, oh God, it must be
6 months.
at least 6 months, then you would expect him to have cramp. But the rumours only get away.
Would you like to see him?
Right, well, 100%. I would love to see him back, right? And we've actually been talking about it for 6 months on a Celtic State of Mind, because we get people sometimes giving us wee bits of snippets of information and stuff like that. So we've got a network, but it's one of the ones, Sam, where you can't say such and such told me this because they'll never speak to you again. And we were getting told in the summer that he was #1 on Brendan Rodgers' wish list. And then the injury happened for Scotland, and it was apparently a muscle off the bone injury, which just sounds horrible, right? So then obviously we knew at that point, but I just think the timing's right. The timing's right. We couldn't get him had he not had that injury. We couldn't get a player who's making a reported 120 grand a week. Simply, we just couldn't do the deal, right? No matter how you built the deal, Tommy, we couldn't get a player like that back at Celtic. Then you get people looking at the reasons why not to do it. Oh, never go back and all this nonsense, it's just cliched kind of stuff. Kieran Tierney coming back to Celtic gives you, again, part of that heartbeat, the club that I always go on about, the nucleus of people who have come through from a young age, who know what it means to so many people. And Brendan Rodgers and him, I think there's a real alliance between the two. And if we can do a deal, and he's the highest paid player at the football club, do it. Get it done. And the injury thing as well, Tommy, it's always going to be a concern. I don't know if that was because he played so much football as a young player at Celtic. I'm not sure how that's affected him negatively. But even if he's to come in and be managed, then we manage Carter Vickers. We manage his football, Tommy. He doesn't play every game. Brendan Rodgers could manage him a wee bit better. I just think the influence of that player, as well as on the park, but in the dressing room, on the training pitch, he'll tell us better than anybody.
You think we should invest?
He'd be a huge asset for Celtic. Not just on the pitch, but as you said, training ground, having people like him are the kind of people that you need to kind of continue that process of driving standards, and KT being in there, the next young player coming through gets to copy him.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I copied all the kind of best pros when I was coming through. Lustig, Kolo Toure was there doing stuff. I always remember watching these guys and trying to basically copy everything they did. So you want guys, good role models in there to help the next KT come through, or whoever it may be.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
But I don't know how it works with money and stuff,
I think there is a reasonable conversation to be had about you wouldn't welcome everybody, but we had a bit of a conversation about there was talk, and I think it's garbage, but there was talk about Eduardo being available, and because it seems to be now a man without a club, because he can't play for another English club because he's went out on loan. He's played with Leicester, but then they're now no want him, so he can't play with another English. He can't go out on loan. So, but I don't have the same attitude about him that I do about KT. I think we got the best out of him, and I think we were good for Edward. I think we were great for Edward. But I'm not sure that there's an emotional alliance between Edward and the club that exists with Kieran Tierney?
100%. Don't know why, but maybe it's because Katie's been there since he was a young boy.
Yeah.
You know, and he's obviously a Celtic fan.
I want to make it happen. I want it to happen. You know what I mean? Positive thoughts.
Who else do we need? In your opinion, January is round the corner. Who should? Who
I mean,
what should we be buying?
the squad's strong across the. But I love Kuhn. I love his style of play in terms of Kuhn, just being very dynamic and running it. I love players like that. I think they're exciting to watch.
Early.
Does he remind you a wee bit of Paddy Roberts?
I bet Paddy Roberts is maybe not as fast.
Nowhere near as fast.
Not as fast.
But maybe more.
Glides in.
I know, but
Does that?
Paddy was very tricky.
Yeah.
Very tricky,
Yeah.
but didn't have the pace. In fact, see if he did have the pace, he'd probably still be at
Different
Man
level. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would agree.
That was the difference.
Yeah.
But I definitely, Sam, think we need another winger.
Another one like Kuhn.
we need another winger because I think to myself, Maeda, Kuhn, brilliant, but 60, 65 minutes gone. Who are you bringing on that's going to have an impact? Jamesy, I love him to bits. He's an absolutely legend. He's fantastic. And I don't mind him being one of the wingers that's on the bench. Yang, I'm still not convinced. He's showing wee bits. I think he's still quite young. But Palmer doesn't do it for me. I just don't.
I think they'll loan Yang out. I think they'll loan him.
Think so?
Yeah. And I agree with you, Tommy. A winger on the left-hand side so that you've got a right and a left backup. And then a midfield player because we've got a surplus of guys like Holm and Kwon are still at the football club. Kwon's out on loan. Novroski and Welsh. These guys aren't playing. So
I've read there that they're talking about bringing back Dane Murray.
Dane Murray for Queen's Park.
Queen's Park.
Right, okay.
Because
he's pinging in all these systems. These performances.
Now, how do you say Big Mick?
Novroski.
Clearly he's not in the plan.
Nice. 9 minutes he's played.
And Stephen, probably the best thing Stephen Welsh can do is go and get full-time football somewhere else.
Go and do that somewhere else because Italy were calling, weren't they, a few seasons ago. You went over to Latvia. Interesting place to go, and you to try and find out more about the culture of the football. And is that something you're going to do more of? Are you going to travel all over the place and do that kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's a new project that I'm working on called the World Through Football. So essentially that was a pilot. So I went over with one camera guy, filmed essentially me going into a new location, new environment, different country, new team, all Latvian, right? So it was very interesting. It was a top division team, and I basically lived like a player for the week. So trained with the team, ate with the team, went to the gym with the team, had a chat with the manager, sports scientist, explored kind of wider community and just what life's like there. And essentially my idea is to showcase that. It's sitting on YouTube right now, but showcase it to whoever's interested, and maybe someone goes, okay, brilliant, maybe I'll give it a go. Not necessarily Latvia, but just trying something a little bit different, just hoping to maybe educate and inspire them to do that. I've also been out to the US and Dubai with 2 other clubs, similar format, documentary, immersing myself with a new team and living like a player in a new country for a week and essentially showcasing that. That's what I'm working on now. It's really interesting stuff. The team in Dubai, the manager Stephen Taylor. So you just meet these ex-Newcastle players. You meet these unique characters that are, you know, in places where people wouldn't think they would be, and you get to chat to them and find out their stories and stuff like that. So that's what I'm working on just now.
You need to visit Owen Coyle over in India. Do it there.
India would be a really cool place to go and showcase, because you don't necessarily, you see a lot of this stuff, maybe a documentary on a team from the outside, but you don't necessarily always get that access where, because I'm basically in the changing room chatting to the players and the camera crew's in with me, and you're seeing these kind of moments that you don't normally see, that you maybe see on the likes of, you know, some of the documentaries on Netflix, whether it be the Man City one or Sunderland Till I Die. So you get, it's really, really good access. And I think it's really interesting. I find it interesting. So,
got one final question about your own career, Sam. You made yourself this kind of goal. You created this objective, and you met it. You met the challenge a third of the way through. You got back into the game. You're still a young man. Do you think you'll get back into it again, or are you done with that?
So it's interesting. I had a chat with someone the other day, and they did an article on me called "Unfulfilled Potential." But maybe the person said to me then, maybe it's a slight play on words because, okay, you maybe didn't fulfill your potential on the pitch, but now you're doing something else, and you maybe feel as though you're fulfilling your potential in the kind of social media space. But to answer your question in terms of playing, I would say I used to set myself goals. You know, in football, I used to say I want to play 36 games this season. Realised that injuries can happen, managers might not pick you, so I started to change my goals and focus on more things that I could control. So I don't necessarily look too far ahead. Right now I'm working on the documentary. In 6 months' time I might be like, okay, I'd quite like to set a base here in whatever country and play football here. So I hope to play again. I love being part of a team and I love playing football. So I would say 27, 5, 6, 7 years maybe left in me. So hopefully a couple more of those are football seasons.
I think Love Island is your choice.
Love Island FC.
Don't go back to the law degree. That's what I'm going to say. Don't go back to
I've got 6 months left. If I don't finish it, my gran will kill me and my mum.
Finish it.
I need to finish it.
The thing is, Sam, you've done it unconventionally. Your football career is unconventional, and I like that. I like the fact that you've dipped out, you've gone back in, kept yourself fit all the time, and then you're saying there, maybe within the next 5 years, some of those years will be playing years. Nobody thinks like that, Tom. It's like once you're out, you're out. And they never ever get back in because obviously life takes over. The other thing I want a wee insight from you, Sam. You worked with Brendan Rodgers. Tommy and I constantly going about European progression. Brendan spoke about it at his opening press conference when he returned to the club. What does it look like for Celtic, and do you think Brendan's the man to make it happen?
I mean, from my experience, I think he's been one of the best man managers I've ever seen operate, because I was at Celtic through a lot of managers, being there from 12 until 20. He was the one that stood out in terms of just operating at a really high level. You know, he made people from the cleaners to the cooks to the reserve players to the first team players all feel part of something special. So I think in terms of how he operates, he's doing everything he can. That in terms of progressing into with European football and stuff like that, a lot of it comes from budget and having money to buy players and spend on players. That's not necessarily within his control. But in terms of having someone at the club to help Celtic progress, I would say he's the man for the job. I loved playing under him for those 2 or 3 years that he was there.
You mentioned it in one of your lists, didn't you? Always remember everybody's name. Everybody's as important as everybody else. Did that come from Brendan, do you think? You bet?
Yeah, just being engaged with everyone, making everyone feel part of something. Again, it's just being polite, I think, as well, and doing your job properly. It's something that I picked up from him.
That's brilliant. Listen, Sam, it's been intriguing, and I can't wait to see what your next journey is and who you play with and what country it's in. And we'll share your links underneath the video to your YouTube documentary series as well. Thank you for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thanks again for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind. Join us next Friday at 6 o'clock for This is Acsom.